So this week we're gonna discuss about GUI. It's a graphical user interface. So yeah, we are learning how to add a GUI, graphical user interface, to a game. So GUI is a part of the user interface that the players can see and interact with, like buttons, health bars, and text. So in games, this GUI is often displayed on the top of the game scene uh, in what we call a heads up display, HUD. So this display allows players to see important information like their health or score without interrupting the gameplay. So interact with these elements, and the next step would be placing UI elements on the display. So in Unity you create a canvas where you can position your UI elements. So these elements include buttons, text, sliders, images. So to position these elements, you'll use anchor points so that the elements stay in the right place on the screen even when the screen size changes. And the next step would be programming interactions with the UI. So after placing the elements, you'll need to write the code to make the UI interactive. So this could include making that buttons clickable or sliders that change settings in the game, for example a volume control. And next step would be making the GUI respond to the game events. So the next step is connecting the UI to the actual gameplay. For example, if the player loses health in a game, the health bar in the GUI should update to reflect this. And the last step would be making the game respond to the GUI events. So like finally the game needs to react to what happens in the GUI. For example, when the player presses a button to start the game, the game should actually begin. So that's what making the game respond to the GUI elements. So some of the key differences in games is in regular softwares like websites, the GUI is the main interface. The buttons and the text are what the user interacts with. In games, GUI is an additional layer on the top of the gameplay, which is why we call it the HUD. So it's not the main action, but it helps players interact with the game and get important information. So for example, imagine you're playing a first person shooter game. The HUD might show you your remaining health in a bar at the top of the screen, and the number of bullets you have left in your gun, and a button to pause the game or go to settings menu. So yeah, in this topic, you're going to learn how to build this kind of interface using Unity's advanced UI system. You'll be able to create a canvas, place UI elements like buttons, text, and connect them to the game so that they respond to what happens in the game and vice versa. So by end of this topic, you'll know how to build a functional interactive interface for any game. Let's go to next topic. So to begin building a heads-up display HUD for your game, it's important to first understand the difference between Unity's GUI system and the methods you can use to create user interfaces. So there are two primary systems. The first one is immediate mode GUI, and the other one is advanced 2D UI interface, which is a retained mode. So let's break them down and discuss how to use each system effectively. So first one is immediate mode GUI. So this was Unity's initial UI system where UI elements like buttons are drawn and managed using code. So immediate mode means that UI elements are drawn and updated every frame using the code. You don't use the Unity's editor for placing these elements, but rather write functions that describe them. Um, so for example, uh, you can have on GUI method, uh, like for every frame a button is drawn in the specified position. If clicked, it triggers a debug message, while immediate mode is quick and simple for creating buttons with code. It is limited and doesn't offer much flexibility for polished complex UI elements. When it comes to advanced 2D interface, which is a retained mode, so this system works in retained mode where you design the interface layout once, and the Unity automatically continuously renders the UI without needing to redraw each frame. We use You use the canvas system in Unity to visually lay out your elements, UI elements such as text, buttons, sliders, and etc. So this system is more powerful and flexible because you can design everything visually using the Unity editor. It also allows you to use custom images and interact more smoothly with the UI. So some of the advantages of the retained mode is which is more polished and professional results, and also easier to customize the appearance with images and other graphical elements. You can preview the layout directly in the editor while placing elements. And the next topic is planning the layout, the HUD layout. So before building the HUD, you need a simple plan for the interface layout. In in the project, the UI will basically include score display. This basically shows uh, the score display shows the player's score in the corner of the screen, and we'll have a settings button, which is a gear icon that when clicked will bring up a pop-up window for settings. And we also have a pop-up window. This will contain the text input for the player's name and a slider to adjust movement speed. So by laying out these elements, you'll create a simple interface that interacts with the gameplay. And next is importing UI images. So to create UI elements, you will be using sprites, which are 2D images. So the steps to import and prepare these images are like, first step is you'll basically drag the images into the project view in the Unity, and make sure to set the imported images texture type to sprite, which is a 2D, and UI in the inspector. So this setting makes sure that the images can be used as 2D sprites in the UI. If you're working on a 3D project, Unity defaults the texture type to texture, so you will need to manually adjust it to sprite. So with these images prepared, we'll be ready to start designing the actual interface by dragging and positioning the sprites on the screen as UI elements. You can also add buttons, uh, labels, sliders, and etc. So by understanding these two GUI systems and planning your UI elements, you'll be able to create a responsive and visually appealing interface for your game. So whether you're working on a 2D or 3D game, the process of setting up a UI remains the same. Plan, import assets, and then lay out the elements using Unity's editor tools. Next is setting up the GUI display in Unity. So to set up the GUI display in Unity, you will need to follow several important steps, starting with understanding how to use canvases for creating interfaces. The canvas acts as a container for the UI elements like buttons, text, and images, allowing them to properly displayed on the screen. So first is creating a canvas for the interface. So basically a canvas is a special object that renders UI elements on the screen. In Unity, you need to create a canvas to display any user interface components such as buttons or text overlays. So how to create a canvas? You go to game object and then select UI, and then you'll see canvas to create a new canvas, and you can rename it for clarity. And the canvas scales to match the screen size, with 1 pixel of the screen corresponding to 1 unit in the scene. This can make the canvas seem very large when viewed in the scene mode compared to 3D objects. And next is canvas settings. So the canvas has three rendering modes, each serving different purposes. So first one is screen space overlay. So this is a default mode where UI elements are rendered as flat 2D graphics on top of everything in the game. And we have a screen space camera, which is UI elements are still overlaid, but they can be manipulated to fit camera's perspectives. And we have world space. So the canvas becomes the part of the 3D world, so that the UI elements exist in the same 3D space as the other game objects. So for most HUDs, screen display overlay is the best option because it displaces the UI clearly on the top of the game. And switching to 2D mode. So since you're working with 2D elements on a 3D scene, it's helpful to switch to 2D view mode to better visualize the canvas and the UI elements. You can toggle this in the scene views toolbar, and and we and you'll also have you can also adjust the canvas settings. We have a pixel perfect. There is an option called pixel perfect that ensures that the UI elements remain crisp and sharp by preventing blurriness. So this setting adjusts the position of images to align perfectly with the screen's pixels. And we also have an event system. So event system, when a canvas is created, an event system object is also automatically generated. This allows the UI to respond to the user interactions like clicks, but doesn't require further adjustments for basic functionality. So with the canvas now set up and properly adjusted, you can begin placing sprites and other UI elements on the screen to build your interface. So next is uh, setting up the GUI in Unity. So first you create a canvas for the UI elements. As I mentioned, in Unity, the canvas is a special UI object that holds all the UI elements like buttons, text, images. You need to create a canvas first. Um, and when you create a canvas, Unity, as I mentioned, will automatically add a event system object. You don't need to interact with this object directly, but it's necessary for handling user input. And to make it easier to work with UI, switch to 2D view in the scene view by clicking the 2D button on at the top of the scene window. And when you double click on the canvas in the hierarchy to focus on it, the canvas has several settings that determine how it works. Uh, by default, render mode is set to screen space overlay, which means the UI will appear over the entire game scene. So as I mentioned, there are other modes, screen space camera, which lets the UI elements rotate with camera, and the world space, which makes the UI behave like objects in the 3D world. But for now, just use the default screen space overlay. And you'll also turn on the pixel perfect settings. This ensures that your UI elements are displayed crisply on the screen without any blurring. And next, you will create the actual elements for the UI. Go to game object, UI, and image. You'll find uh, basically it's to click on the image to create an image element. This will display an image like a enemy icon in the HUD, and then go to the text mesh pro for adding text elements. You'll use this to display the score, and then you'll also add a button text mesh pro from the UI. So the button will be used for the settings. Make sure all these elements are the children of the canvas object, which happens automatically when you create them through the UI menu. And next is you set up the set images and text. So now you'll use the sprites, which are the images for the UI elements. So in the inspector window, you'll find a source image property from the image and the button components. You basically drag the appropriate sprite from the project window into this slot. For example, you can assign the enemy sprite to the image object and the gear icon to the button. So for text, go to the text mesh pro component in the inspector, and you can type the placeholder score value like 100 in the text input field, and adjust the font size to around 24, and change the color to black and to make it readable. And next step would be organizing the UI elements. So using the rect tool, so position the UI elements uh, in the corner of the screen. For example, place the score text near the top left corner, and the settings button at the top right, and the parent the text under the image so that it moves together with the image. This means that if you move the image, the score text will also move with it. So once everything is set up, when you press play to see the UI overlaid on the 3D scene, you should see the enemy icon and the score text and the settings button displayed on the top of the game. So yeah, by following these steps, you can set up a simple but effective HUD for your game that includes images, text, interactive buttons. This will help you provide crucial information and interactions to the player while they are immersed in the gameplay. Uh, yeah, this is a basic UI with all the, but yours can look different. It looks a bit off, but yeah, this is how it looks. So anchors. So anchors in Unity's UI system are a way to position UI elements like images, buttons, or text relative to the screen or canvas, which also ensuring that they stay in the same position even when the screen size or resolution changes. So what are anchors? Anchor points are used to control where an object is placed on the screen. So instead of specifying a fixed position like 50 pixels for the from the top, and your position objects relative to an anchor like the top left corner. And for example, if an object is anchored to a top left corner of the screen, it will always stay in that corner even if the screen size changes or if you resize the game window. And how anchors work: every UI in Unity, uh, which can be text, images, buttons, has an anchor which is shown as a X symbol in the editor. This anchor determines where the object will stick on the canvas. Like for example, by default, UI elements have their anchor in the center of the screen. If you resize the window, they'll remain centered. And we also have a top left anchor. If you move the anchor to the top left corner, the UI element will stay in that corner no matter the screen size. So setting anchors in the Unity. So first step would be selecting the object in the Unity editor. Select the UI element you want to anchor, like for example an image or a button. Uh, and next is changing the anchor point. So in the inspector panel, when you look for anchor settings, located just below the transform options, use the anchor presets to choose where you want the object to stay, like the top left, bottom right, etc. Like for example, setting the anchor to top left will keep the object fixed in the top left corner. So why anchors are important? First one is flexibility. Anchors allow UI elements to adjust their positions automatically when the screen size changes. This makes your game responsive to different devices, like for example, large monitors, small screens. And the other benefit is stability. So by anchoring elements to the specific parts of the screen, you make sure the important UI components like score displays, health bars, or buttons stay where players expect them to be. So like for example, if you anchor the score display to the top left corner and the settings button to top right, they will always remain in those corners even if the player resizes the game window or switches to full screen mode. And we also have advanced anchors. So anchors can do more than just control position. They can also help resize elements. For example, you can anchor all four corners of an object to different parts of the screen so that the object stretches or shrinks along with the window size. So basically, anchors help your game's UI makes your game's UI adaptable to different screen sizes by keeping UI elements positioned correctly. They are easy to set using the Unity's anchor presets. They also make sure your interface looks good and behaves correctly on any device from big monitors to small mobile devices. So that's about anchors. We'll discuss the rest of the topics in the next class.